Well, thank you for coming. We're here today to talk about this report, which I'm releasing to the Legislative Assembly. Today, a Vision for Change, but it's a response to this report, which is a report from the province of Ontario. It's called the Climate Change Action Plan, which reports on the greenhouse gas reductions of the Government of Ontario in the previous year. So my job is to review that and critically analyze it, and I've done so in today's report. So I have some remarks and I have some graphs to show you. So it'll be a little bit of a school lesson time. Just pay attention. We'll get through it. Anyway, we are at a critical point in world history. The international community has finally accepted the long-standing scientific consensus that climate change is a clear and apparent danger to our ecosystems and our society. Nations are meeting in Copenhagen to try and agree on targets for reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and there's some optimism that we might succeed. Ontario already has targets, of course, set back in 2007. We are pledged to reduce greenhouse gas emissions to 6% below our 1990 levels by 2014, 15% below 1990 by 2020, and 80% below that baseline year by 2050. These are not aggressive targets, and not, according to the latest science, even adequate targets, but they are targets nonetheless. The problem is that the way we're going, we're not going to make even these modest targets for greenhouse gas emission reductions. We will fail. The Climate Change Action Plan, released by the government, the province's latest report to the Ontario public on our progress in reducing greenhouse gases, says we will fail. And this is profoundly disturbing. It speaks to the essential challenge of our times. We can set targets, but we haven't figured out how to meet them. All measures proposed in 2007 that were expected to achieve over 60 megatons of reductions by 2014 are now only projected to amount to 34 megatons. And three-quarters of that, some 26 megatons, is the result of the coal plant closures alone. By 2020, only tiny reductions will be achieved in the transportation sector, a major source of greenhouse gases, and even smaller cuts will be achieved in the building sector, and no cutbacks at all will be found in the industrial sector. The proposed mechanisms to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in the plan are so weak that in the period between 2014 and 2020, emissions actually are forecast to increase. The report suggests that we should place our hopes on cap and trade as a means of closing the gap between our promises and our projections. But cap and trade is largely beyond Ontario's control. If such a mechanism is achieved at all, others will negotiate it with little consideration of Ontario's needs or timelines. Somebody has to come up with homegrown solutions for Ontario because they're not in this plan. And a final concern is that we're not even sure who that somebody is. We are 2 years into this process, and it's not clear what individual government ministries have been tasked to do, and it's unclear who's accountable for achieving the results. The plan is projecting failure. The public deserves to have a clear understanding of what efforts are being made and who is responsible to take the necessary corrective actions. I'm going to show you a few graphs in the report, if you'll indulge me, because I think we want to emphasize and clarify some matters. So it's going to be 4 graphs. They're in pairs of 2. The first one is, this is figure 6 out of the Climate Change Action Plan, the province's report. And it shows on the x-axis from 1990 out to 2020, which is the period of time we're talking about. This is on this axis we have the number of megatons emitted. Of course, 1990 is our baseline year. And out here, these are the target years, these histograms. Now, 165 megatons, that's 6% below 1990. It's supposed to be in 2014. It actually occurs, the histogram, in 2015 in their report. But the target is nonetheless 2014. And the second target is 2020 out there. Now, the green line is, solid green line is actual emissions that we know are forecasted to go to 2007. We have accurate data. The dotted green line is a projection of what we call a business as usual case, which is the emissions projected as if we did nothing. This is what we would have expected to release. And the gold line, you can see, is what they are projecting in the Climate Change Action Plan of the province. Note that the gold line doesn't touch the targets. Now I'm going to just recast that a little bit to make it a little clearer. This is our figure 1 of my report. It's the same data, presented a little different axis, just the same way, same 1990, 2020. The axis is similar. The actual emissions are in histograms here. And here are the 2 lines. But I project them here just to show you the shortfall. In 2014, I put the histogram on 2014 because that's the target. They're projecting, with their plan right now, to be 15 megatons short. And out in 2020, 35 megatons short. A significant shortfall in the targets. We're not going to make them. And the other thing the reason I brought this graph particularly, because I think on this scale you can see that between 2014 and 2020, you can see there that the emissions actually rise. That is not progress. So that's the first and most significant point about exactly where we are not meeting our targets. Now let's break that down a little bit. I'm going to tilt this one for you. This is figure 7 from the Climate Change Action Plan. And it breaks down emissions by sectors. And the sectors are transportation, industry, electricity, buildings, agriculture, and waste. And this is the government is attempting to show the green lines are the business as usual projections, megaton equivalents of CO2. And the blue lines are called forecasted reductions. And I think this graph is a little unclear because all the histograms are the same size. There's different colors down here. It doesn't really illustrate the point very well, so I've recast this one too in my report. So this is figure 7 from their report. Here's figure 3 from my report. Same information, simplified histograms. The blue lines are business as usual lines. The red lines are the forecasted remaining emissions after the reductions occur. And the reason I want to emphasize this and point this out is this tells the story. The story is here. If you look, in the transportation sector, the biggest source of emissions, very, very modest reductions. This is by 2020, very modest reductions. In the industry sector, no reductions forecast. Electricity, there's your coal plant closures. Of course, a big drop. The electricity sector is bearing the burden, if you like, of all the reductions achieved. Buildings, again, very modest reductions. Agriculture, waste, those areas, very tiny reductions. So the problem is we're going to miss our targets. The other problem is, sectorally, we haven't really done anything, or we're not projecting to do anything significant in some major sector areas, like transportation. And industry, the report alludes to the fact that cap and trade may come in, and cap and trade will achieve some objectives here. But of course, cap and trade's out of the province's control. We don't know what cap and trade. We don't even know if there is going to be a cap and trade because, as you know, the U.S. Congress may not pass it. They may have to go through administrative channels in the U.S. EPA. So that's the picture. Sectorally, not uniform. All the weights put on electricity. There's huge opportunities in transportation for reduction, huge opportunities in industry for reduction, huge opportunities in buildings for reductions, but we don't have any of those tools itemized. We haven't got any tools in the toolkit. The plan just forecasts failure going forward, and I think that is not acceptable. So thank you.